Good evening. I'll call this Committee of the Whole meeting to order here in council chambers. I do not believe we have any remote electronic attendance, so we'll move to our oath of office for promotional appointment to Justin Mitten to Fire Lieutenant effective October 9, 2022. Mr. Regan-Weather.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good evening, members of council. I appreciate your time tonight as I get the pleasure to introduce to you Lieutenant Mitten prior to taking his oath of office. Justin's a 16-year veteran of the Moline Fire Department, served in various roles throughout his career, most recently as engineer. He's held the rank of firefighter, paramedic, and engineer leading up to tonight. Lieutenant Mitten's promotion was effective October 9th, and he is currently assigned to our 3rd Battalion, Engine 11. So I introduce to you Lieutenant Justin Mitten.
We need to actually go to the center so that someone in your family can see. All right, please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Justin Mitten, having been duly promoted to the rank of lieutenant of the Fire Department for the City of Moline, Illinois, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Illinois, and will strictly adhere to the laws of the State of Illinois and the City of Moline, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of Lieutenant of the Fire Department for the City of Moline, Illinois, according to the best of my ability. Congratulations. Thank you.
There you go.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. Well deserved. Congratulations.
And if you could sign that with me.
Yes, absolutely.
One for you and one for me. Here. And you can take all the pictures from it.
The whole front row is pretty good.
Yeah, working the crowd.
Gonna do pictures out there, I guess.
Yeah, I think so.
I don't think they're all here to see us. No. They all want to go through the budget.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move to our item number 4, board appointments. Mayor's appointment of Craig Loken to the Plan Commission to fill the unexpired term of Samantha Ganji, expiring June 30th, 2027. Any questions? All right, hearing none. Is there any public comment this evening? Hearing none. Any questions on the agenda? All right, we move to our COW agenda item 7.1, a resolution supporting continued efforts to resolve public safety concerns regarding the Illinois Safety Act. We have sponsors.
Well, I'll move to approve.
Second.
All right, motion by Alderman Went, second by Alderman Williams.
Thank you, Your Honor. I've had the opportunity to speak with a number of law enforcement officers as well as friends that work in DA's offices throughout the state. And they are all concerned with how the Safety Act will be implemented in January, if not amended. First, I want to say that my intent by submitting this item to the council is for consideration is not because I oppose all aspects of the Safety Act. Moline has been a leader in body camera deployment, and our use of force guidelines have, for as long as I've been on council, met the guidelines of this act. As a landlord, I have had tenants who have been picked up for shoplifting and have disappeared into the system for days because they did not have the ability to pay their bail. So I personally believe in and support some of the reforms included in the Safety Act. But that being said, there are far too many things in this act that will contribute to our communities being less safe. While I applaud the few minor tweaks that this bill has, that have been passed for this bill over the last year, they're simply not enough. This act is simply too vague and puts our officers at risk both physically and legally when they are doing their job. If there is no consensus of what the rules are, I don't know how we can expect our officers to enforce it. It is important for the City of Moline to speak with one voice that we are in support of our officers and our law-abiding residents, and call on legislatures to work with the public safety representatives and all community stakeholders to fix the remaining problems with the Safety Act, including but not limiting ensuring that cash bail is appropriate for violent offenders, clearing up the vague language in the act that puts our officers in jeopardy of liability for enforcing unclear statutes, and eliminating the provision of the act that limits police's ability to remove trespassers from residential or commercial spaces, and instead limits the officers to simply providing them citations in those cases. The residents of Moline expect and deserve better governance, and I urge you to support the resolution.
Thank you. Anything further? Mr. Timian?
Thank you, Your Honor. I appreciate Alderman Wentz' well-thought-out reasoning for supporting this. I do want to say, though, that this very same resolution, slightly modified, is available online with two groups that I've found. A group called Awake Illinois and a group called Safe Suburbs USA. And before we vote on this, I kind of would like to talk about what these groups represent and who they are. They are a part of a national trend pushing divisive rhetoric. For example, Awake Illinois is an active anti-LGBTQ group. You may laugh, Alderman Wendt, but I would like to finish. They promoted a protest that was sponsored by the Proud Boys at a place called Uprising Bakery. After they announced their support, the bakery was violently vandalized and forced to reschedule the event. They also opposed another event in Awake Illinois supported another event in Downers Grove Library, which resulted in threats of violence against the library officials, and this event too was canceled. I've mentioned before on the floor that my child is transgender. And the extreme anti-LGBTQ rhetoric of this group's official Twitter account is alarming, and is something I will not have any association with. I did not join City Council to remind members of this body that flirting with extremism is bad. But here we are. We're introducing some of their legislation. I may not speak for the entire council by rejecting extremism in our community, but I know that I speak for the majority of Moline. I support our Human Rights Commission's motto by repeating that hate has no home here. And I encourage other members of this council to reject this resolution and anything that these groups like this touch or support. Thank you.
Mr. Waldron?
Thank you, Your Honor. First off, I want to say I appreciate Alderman Wendt's comments and I appreciate Alderman Timian's comments. They both make good points. My point is a little bit different, coming from right field instead of left in the center. I don't believe this is our fight. I think this is with our legislators at the state. I think this is legislation created by them, should be modified by them if they find that it's wrong, and I'm not sure this is our lane to take up the issue. I won't support it because I don't think it belongs here. It belongs at the state of Illinois, and allow them to modify it, not us. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Mr. Williams, then Mr. Wendt.
I agree it's not ours to change, but certainly it's ours to represent the citizens of Moline, to encourage them to look at this before it becomes a problem. It will be a problem. So you will go on record tonight if you want to support law enforcement. We're down 17 officers, 10 real bodies, 17 with those in training. It's in part because the national narrative has been codified and it exists in Illinois. Police officers, the people that we used to get that wanted to be police officers are few and far in between, and we're losing good ones right and left. All this is a way to encourage the legislature, hey, We know it's gonna cost the taxpayers money, real money, with these changes. Some that are overdue and need to be made, but quite a few that only gonna make Moline less safe and cost Moliners more money. We just wanted to make common sense approach. And to put a national narrative onto this, just asking for positive change is grandstanding, and it doesn't belong in this council, as much as I respect what you had to say. I think that it's not a good thing for us to shy away from it. It's a tough issue, but we should go on record how we feel about it, and I think if we don't support it, we're just gonna pay for it at the beginning of the year. Because everywhere this has been tried, it's failed miserably. Not failed, failed miserably.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Mr. Went?
Thank you, Your Honor. While I appreciate and agree that hate has no place here, the argument that was made, let's just call it what it is, it's what's called a straw man argument. The idea that you make something a boogeyman because there happens to be someone who supports it so that the entire idea then becomes a bad idea is remedial at best. If the alderman would have called me, I would have told him this was based off of exactly what Naperville had passed. It was taken from that. I have no idea about these other organizations, and any insinuation that that had anything to do with what I pulled up is false, and unfortunately seems to be a pattern of saying things for grandstanding places rather than actually getting to the facts here. So I take offense towards any insinuation that this is because of any of those organizations that I have nothing to do with and do not agree with and think are vile. So, but this is something that I had spoken with our officers to the point of us losing the number of officers in our area. I agree. I wish our state legislature, rather than passing a shell bill and then at the last minute sticking this thing into it so there wasn't actually any debate when it got passed, I would love for our legislature to actually be transparent and get input from our communities. That would be terrific, but unfortunately that's not the case. And so again, as speaking for the residents of Moline, I don't want a situation in which someone is trespassing on one of our residents' land. They go up and they sit on their porch and they call the police that says, hey, this guy is hanging out on my porch, and the officer can only come up and give a citation and has to walk away. They can't do anything to remove them. Any Class B or Class C misdemeanors can only be remedied by a citation under the current language of this act. It needs to be cleaned up. Like I said, there are definitely portions of this act that I support, but as it is right now, if it passes and as it continues and is implemented in January, it is going to cause real issues with our officers and put them in personal liability for enforcing language that there's already 50, I think, lawsuits about this out there. I think that a common sense approach of just saying, hey, listen to the public safety people, listen to the people of the state, and amend and clean this thing up, I don't see any problem with that.
Thank you, Mr. Went. Mr. Schmidt?
This entire procedure is grandstanding. It's political posturing and it's purely partisan. It has been, it remains to be. I will not vote for a resolution that makes accusations against the state legislature. I will not vote for any resolution that puts cash bail, support of putting cash bail back into the mix. I agree violent offenders should not be released, but it shouldn't be that some violent offenders get to be because they can afford the bail. And so you're calling for here to put a gray area that allows some violent offenders to still be eligible for a cash bail system on some offenses. That's a complete non-starter for me.
All right. Yes, Mr. O'Brien?
Well, I come from obviously the left. I'm probably pretty far left of anybody on this council, but I'm also a crime victim myself. I'm I'm not talking about my daughter's student loans. That's white collar crime. They're allowed to do. I understand that every county in the state has filed some kind of concern with the state about this. It's got some problems. And I haven't checked with the state's attorney, but I mean, if we start releasing people that shouldn't be released, the county is looking at a lawsuit. So I mean, I looked at this pretty hard, and I respect what Alderman Timian said. It's, we don't want to be on the same side of hate groups. If they support this, that's unfortunate, but I'm reading this ordinance, I didn't see anything wrong with at least questioning some of the things that, as Alderman Williams said, we're having a hard time hiring police as it is. I mean, and I don't know that this new law is going to help the police enforce, the laws that are on the books. So that's just how I feel about it.
Okay. Anyone else that hasn't spoken? I'll just submit for the record that you all did receive an update from our chief on the efforts he's undertaken over the past 10 months in conjunction with conversations with me, and want to reiterate that our lobbyist downstate is well aware of the concerns that local governments have, and has this on his desk for working with legislators in the veto session to make sure they understand local concerns. With that, we'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Need to take a roll call, please.
Alderperson Macias,
Nay.
Wentz,
Aye.
Timian,
Nay.
Moyer,
Aye.
O'Brien,
Aye.
Waldron,
Nay.
Schmidt,
Nay.
Williams.
Aye.
4 ayes, 4 nays. Your Honor, do you care to vote?
No. Thank you.
And that motion fails.
All right, so we move to number 8, our informational. Mr. Vitas, the 2022 to 2024 Action Plan Dashboard for fiscal year 2022, Quarter 3 report.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council, for the opportunity to present the third quarter report on the progress of our strategic plan and our action plan and dashboard. As we get to the end of, as we are in the fourth quarter, there's very little time left to advance these projects and complete them, but our goal will be to get more projects completed and posted successfully by the end of the current fiscal year on December 31st. As you know, there were 85 major goals in our strategic plan that are reported in the dashboard. As of the end of this quarter, the past quarter ending September 30th, 14 of the 85 goals are fully completed. And in the cover memo I provided you, there was a list of those 14. Currently, there are 53 goals that are on track. There are 9 goals that are behind schedule as of today. And there are 9 goals that are not yet started or are on hold at this point for various reasons. So with that, I submit the report to the council and to the members of the public, and it will be posted online for everyone to be able to review. And if there's any questions, we're more than happy to answer them.
Thank you. Do you have any questions on that? Thank you very much. Administration's recommendation on the 2023 to 2025 budgets. And you have the budget books. Returning them to you or to Ms. Barnes?
Me first, then Carol.
Okay.
She's going to take the
Thank
show.
you.
I want to, first of all, congratulate Carol, her team, and the entire staff, both across all departments, not only the directors, but those who work for the directors and actually assisted in compiling the budget for fiscal year 2023, as well as 24 and 25, which are balanced across all funds for all 3 years. So keeping on track with our recent budget award that we received from the GLFA, I feel we're making progress toward that again, with the submission of this budget. Proud to present it on behalf of the entire staff. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Carol because she's going to take the next hour to gently guide you through what has been a long-standing body of work to get prepared. So I'll turn it over to Carol.
Yes, thank you, Bob. And thank you, Mayor and Council. We are very pleased to be, like Bob said, presenting to you a balanced budget for the years 23 through 25. Each of those 3 years are balanced. For the year 23, the total budget is just shy of $160 million. And we're going to take some time to go through that tonight. We have been working on the budget for almost 4 years now. 4 years. It feels like 4 years. 4 months. For almost 4 months. And I will say that the budget process this year has been filled with a lot of challenges in light of the fact that we're facing the 8.2% inflation, as well as we are seeing uncertainty in several of our largest revenue streams. And we're going to go through all of that tonight. Fortunately, your management team that is all with us tonight is used to very conservative budgeting, having just come out of COVID. So we are staying the course that we've been on for the last couple of years, and we're presenting to you a conservative budget with some big decisions for the council to make. And I guess I'm guiding that. I will say here, there is a copy of your PowerPoint in the pocket of your book. I don't know if you'd like to follow along and take notes, or you can follow along on the screen, either way. We just made a copy in case you'd like to take notes. But the budget as proposed maintains healthy fund balances and cash reserves across most of our funds. There's a couple, as you know, that are falling a little short of our policy, and we'll be addressing those. But overall, we're maintaining healthy reserves. The budget as proposed is decreasing the levy rate nearly 3 cents, down to $1.9144. We are recommending and highly encourage council to consider taking advantage of increased property tax dollars available from TIF number 1 closing and increased valuations to help offset the 8.2 inflation that we are seeing everywhere. As we discussed on September the 20th, the budget does include increases in utility fees for stormwater and sanitation. It maintains the city's strong financial foundation, and it aligns with the council's strategic plan and the 3 pillars.
Your Honor, I have a question before we go further.
Yes.
The second bullet point talks about decreasing the levy rate to nearly 3 cents. We don't control the rate at all. Are you saying that you're proposing a reduction in our levy?
We are proposing, it is the levy rate. We are actually increasing the property tax dollars.
Correct.
By over $1 million.
You're increasing the levy then?
Yes, we are increasing the levy, and we will go through that here shortly.
Yeah, I'm not incorrect, though, that we don't control the
No,
rate.
we don't. You're absolutely right, and we don't even find out for sure until May comes around for the exact amount.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Wan.
When you're talking about the levy rate, though, are you making the assumption that the tentative EAV
Yes.
is what will be the final EAV?
Yeah.
Or did you take
It's-
into account that
Yeah,
every year?
We don't have any of the appeal numbers yet.
Well, but over the last 4 years, it's been about a 50% drop of the projected increase of appreciation versus the real appreciation. And so some of us who have been around for a long time understand that the tentative is in no way should be something that we base any calculations on, because it is always wrong.
Yep. No, and I apologize if I should have said, we estimate that the levy rate could decrease about 3% based on that tentative EAV that we and all of the taxing districts received.
But we know, and in the last 10 years, other than 1
Yes.
year, it has always been too high.
Well, there's always appeals. We just received appeals on, we did not. The county just closed the window for appeals yesterday. And we do anticipate Larry Wilson's trying to get us information here by Friday, if possible, prior to Saturday. Otherwise, it will be the first part of next week.
Right, so I'm gonna just ask the council to hold comments and questions until you've been able to get through at least more than the first page.
Okay.
Thank you. I know you've put a lot of work into this, so we should hear what you've done. Thank you.
Should be accurate.
Go ahead, Ms. Barnes.
The budget as presented does fund all existing city services and authorized personnel. Total salaries and benefits total $47 million, and it's up an average of 5.63%, fully staffed. AFSCME currently is in negotiations, and we hope to have that settled towards the first quarter of '23. So there are still some unknowns as far as what that exact contract and what the impact on the budget will be. We do continue to see increased minimum wage, and that does affect all of our seasonal help. Our health insurance is projected to be up about 7.75%, and our IMRF, we're very happy that this year it's actually down to 2.03%. That seems like a crazy low amount compared to what it's been in previous years, the current year at 5.15%. And that's based on, it was overfunded over 100% in the last actuarial report. But the concern, of course, is going forward, is it going to rebound and go back up? So it's kind of hard from a budget standpoint, but that is the amount that we are required to pay in next year's, the 2.03. For this budget, we have minimized our recommendation for new personnel. We're recommending 3 full-time equivalents, and net of savings from overtime and seasonal help, it's an increase of about $103,000. As you know, we continue to have vacancies, and this year, right now as a snapshot, we are at 6.4% vacancies. So what we do then is to take our total salaries and benefits, fully staffed, and we subtract down that average vacancy rate when we propose the budget that you're looking at now. Citywide capital improvements and capital equipment total over $41 million. That's a very aggressive amount. And you are all aware of that from the ARPA standpoint, the large projects we've just discussed, and from our discussions that we had back in September. Our governmental funds, which is the CIP and utilities, are over $26 million. And the proprietary funds, which are your water, WPC, and storm, is over $14.7 million. Those aren't expensed. They aren't a part of the total dollar amount because in the proprietary funds, those assets are capitalized. Debt service and depreciation totals around $14 million, and we've got over $50 million of operating expenses, which are up an average of 4.7%. We saw increases in our operating beginning mid-2022. And so when we talk about the 8.2 inflation, we've accounted for part of that in the current year through our budget amendments we've already proposed, and now a lot of them are ratcheting up again, we anticipate in 2023. And then, of course, we've got trust and agencies and transfers totaling about $18 million. The actions that we have taken so far to offset inflationary impacts are conservative revenue projections. Most of our revenues that we're going to go through in a minute here are flat. IML has suggested that several of our strongest intergovernmental revenues should decrease. And so we've kind of found a middle ground with that. No one has a crystal ball. But we are trying to do our best to be conservative as we move into 2023, and we look to your help as well for where we should actually establish those revenues at. Like I mentioned a minute ago, we are minimizing our new position recommendations. Bob and Leah spent a great amount of time. There's still a lot of needs citywide, but just in light of the current state of the economy, we're minimizing those requests and those recommendations. And then, as you know, part of what we've done already is that we've spread our CIP projects out over multiple years due to the cost of inflation. There were some projects that had to be pushed back, and we just stayed within the budgeted dollars that we have allocated for CIP. And the next one is, we are funding only essential operating expenses, assuming the current 8.2 inflationary rate, again, that happened in the mid-22. We aren't recommending any new programs starting for 2023. And we're going to continue to maintain our healthy fund balances and within city policy, and that helps to guard against unexpected increased expenses as well as reduced revenues in the future. So all that put together leads us to that next point of consideration of increasing property taxes levied and user fees to help fill that budget gap of flat revenues and anticipated increased expenditures. Some of the examples of increased inflation that the city is seeing, as well as nationwide. You hear this all over the TV if you turn it on. Fuel costs. Right now, we are seeing approximately 18 to 20% increases between 22 and into 23. All of our parts, maintenance, mowers, and vehicles are up about 15%. Our gas and electric utility bills, they anticipate are going to be going up 33% for gas, 15% for electric. And our road salt and chemicals are up, almost $200,000. And then in other departments, we've got increases, things you don't think so much about, but just ammunition in the police department, cleaning supplies citywide for janitors, contractual services. Due to labor market conditions, when we try to contract things out, they're seeing increases in their labor. Our maintenance contracts for HVAC, all the heating and air conditioning, even our computer hardware and some of our software maintenance contracts are going up. Our pool chemicals up about 10 to 12%. Same with water and WPC, their chemicals are seeing increases. Vehicle replacements, if you've tried to buy a car, we all know how that is. For new vehicles or used cars, anywhere between 12 to 18%, the higher range being for larger vehicles like our fire apparatus and whatnot. And then we also have our library books. They've had to hunker down and not buy as many. They're staying within the budget, but books are going up as well. And our health insurance and liability and hazmat supplies. If we take a look at 3 of those items, the fuel, we spend right now over $1.2 million in fuel. That percentage increase is almost $250,000 with inflation, up over the current year of 22. Our gas and electric is going to be up over $600,000 projected. And our road salt and chemicals alone, $150,000 to $200,000. Those 3 items alone are almost $1 million. So in a minute, as we speak about having council's consideration for the property tax capture of the new dollars, that's part of the reason why. Because those are essential expenses that we cannot easily cut. As we look at the next slide now, we're turning into revenues citywide. And citywide, our revenues are $160 million. Again, we've told you that the budget is balanced as presented. Some of our largest revenue stream right now is reliance on the federal government. We have ARPA federal funding that we're using. We have some major federal grants that we are applying for CIP to help offset those costs. And then to get into a little bit more detail, these are our top 10 revenue streams. And we're going to get into more detail here in a minute with property taxes, but you can see going back to 2017, the council has always been very conservative with property taxes, and we want to be. That's, always one of the first things when we go to budget is we want to try to keep our taxes and our cost of services low. And then you'll see here in 22 is where we reduced the levy by $500,000. And then in 23 now, we're recommending capturing some of that TIF revenue as well as some of the increased valuation that's coming on board. If we look at the other 9 major revenue streams, sales tax, very, very pleased that has recovered from the COVID years. In 2022, we expect $11,150,000 based on IML, and they have this statewide, information. We can't easily project that. They are recommending that that should stay flat or even decrease, but we have kept it flat. So we're hoping we're not too aggressive on our sales tax money. Home rule sales tax, we have even right now seen a little dip in 22. In 21, we had 8.6 million in home rule, but we are anticipating it to be down to about 8.3 million this year. We've held that flat and then let it creep up in 24, 25. Again, don't have the crystal ball, just very, very hard to know what type of impact this potential inflation has. Our income tax, again, we have to really rely on the state for that. This year, we're very pleased. We have hit kind of an all-time high here at 6.2 million. We've reduced it down slightly to 6 million and then crept it up a little bit to 6.1 for the outer 2 years. Utility tax is kind of the same. We've kept it steady. The next one, the personal property replacement one, is the one that's crazy hard to project. If you look back to 2017, we had 2.6 million, then it dropped down to 2.2, and in the current year, we are going to be at $6.3 million based on what's coming in. It's outstanding. But again, IML and everything that we're reading is they're feeling that's potentially could be dropping back, pulling back. And I did not pull it back as much as what they were recommending, but I did drop it a couple $100,000. And then again, those back 2 years, I kind of met halfway in the middle from where we're seeing right now today. The prepared food and liquor, that's been pretty steady all the way across the board ever since 17, and we're just holding it pretty much at that amount. Then you'll see the water fees, sewer fees, sanitation. Those are all increased based on the projected increased user fees that Tony presented a couple weeks back in the future years. In the current year, or I should say for the 23 year, you'll see those hopping up. Those are largely in water, the result of Silvis and John Deere headquarters coming on board with the water, which is great. That's helped that revenue stream. And then the sewer user fees, again, we've pulled in East Moline and Coal Valley. So that's why you're seeing those come up prior to implementing user fee increases. But other than property taxes, if you look at that green column, I don't know, it's kind of hard to see, it is $75 million. If you were to take out the $1 million of property tax increase that we're talking about, and then take that across the board, you'll see it's very, very flat from next year. And as you're hitting inflation, just the cost of labor, everything going up, you've either got to cut expenditures in some area or look for other revenue sources. Now to go to the property taxes. And we're going to spend a great deal of time of this on Saturday as well, but I want to give you a feel for this so you have something to think about between now and Saturday. Our current EAV, which is a tentative amount that we received from our county assessor, is $853 million. It is up $65 million, or about 8.35% over the current year. Staff is recommending that we reduce the levy rate. It equates to this, nearly 3 cents from $1.94 down to $1.91. And we strongly encourage council to consider taking advantage of increased property tax dollars that are available from TIF 1 closing and increased valuations to help offset the 8.2% inflation here that we've been talking about. And we can do that by increasing property taxes levied, the total levy, up to $16,300,000. It's an increase of $1,028,000 from the current year, and that is up about 6.7%. And that helps fill the gap that we were just talking about. I do need to say, before I move on to the chart there in the middle, at the 6.7, if we choose to move forward with that amount, it would require an additional public hearing for the truth in taxation because we're in excess of the 105%. So our calendar that's in your budget book does address that, but we aren't to that point yet. We've got a lot of talking to go through prior to that. But I do want to show you the breakdown of how those taxes break out. And we've got a detailed chart in your budget packet that's on tab 2, page 3, that we're going to hit on Saturday. But this breaks it out right here in that box. New construction that came into the city will generate about $27,000 new dollars. The taxes available from TIF 1 closing is $529,000. And I would like to say those dollars are new to the city from the standpoint that we could access those for using for other expenses. In the past, they have paid for debt service of the city on bonds in the TIF districts. But it is not new taxes that we are levying against commercial property or residential. They're already paying those dollars. It would just simply go to the city to help offset expenses. And then increased valuations, we're up over 4% citywide. And if we were to take advantage of those, a portion thereof, $471,000, that would help fill that budget gap and bring in about $1,028,000 of new money. Again, no decisions tonight. This is staff's recommendation for consideration. If we take a look at how those property taxes would be allocated, and again, this is another discussion for Saturday, you'll see the 22 column. Currently, the current year at $15,308,000, proposed $16,003,000, and in the last column, you'll see where those new dollars are going to go. And our police and fire pension funds, fortunately, one's up and one's down, but we're down about $150,000 total from where we had projected this year to be. So that was very, very good news from an actuarial standpoint. In the general fund, we are recommending not to levy any money in the general fund. Our debt levy, which is paying the bonds on the pension obligation bonds, are just down ever so slight. And I'm going to skip parks. The public library is down about $60,000. And so they're only needing about $3 million this year. And the difference would go to help fund parks. And that is not all new money to the parks. If we look at the footnote, in the current year we're at, $2.1 million is paid by a transfer from general to parks for operating and debt service this year. And what this does would be reducing the transfer to parks from the general fund, and it frees up spending authority in the general fund. So it's not that the parks budgets are going up $2 million. It's really in the general fund that we are needing it and seeing the biggest jump in expenditures. If we take a look at the property taxes impact then, the impact on an average $127,000 home, and again, this is based on the current EAVs and the number of homes off of the county assessor's rolls. This impact that we are recommending would be $20 for that average home, which would be an increase of about 3.06%. And that's assuming a growth rate of the 4.665. That is the tentative EAV. Again, once we get appeals, that number will change, but right now, this is the best information that we have to work with. And that increase equates to about $1.67 a month on the average residential home. And that is the city's portion of the tax. As you all know, there's the schools, there's the county, and Blackhawk College, those other parts of that levy. So it would be the city's portion would be going up about $1.67 a month. The impact on the average commercial property is up about $125 or 3.1%. And again, that growth was just slightly different at 4.686%. And that would equate to $10.42 per month. We've combined this chart, and you saw part of this when Tony did his presentation on utility fees. We have now added the total impact, including property taxes, if we were to increase property taxes as proposed. And again, on the average $127,000 home, it would be $1.67 a month for property taxes in '23. And then, as we will discuss more on Saturday, the recommendation to increase stormwater fees as well as sanitation. You'll see for stormwater, that's $1.12 a month, and for sanitation, about 66 cents a month. So it's $3.45 a month or $41 a year impact for this. And again, no one wants to raise taxes, no one wants to raise fees, but at the same time, we have to be stewards of the city's budget, and we have to make it balance one way or the other. So we'll be looking at all sorts of options on Saturday. There's also more information on the utilities in your budget book on tabs 19 through 22. On the expenditure side, again, this balances with the revenues that we presented earlier. On tab 2, page 24, and we'll hit this on Saturday, we have a 5-year history of all the fund balances, and you can kind of see where all the budgets have gone up and down. But pretty much across the board, when you look at public safety, public works, cultural, everything is between 3.5% up to about 5.2% increase this year. One of the biggest costs of the budget, as you know, is personnel. And as I mentioned earlier, we are keeping new positions to a minimum this year. It does fund 3 new FTEs, and with benefits, the net amount is $103,000, net of overtime and savings from seasonal help. And those positions are 2 full-time groundskeepers in parks. And the net increase, it's a net increase of $19,000, and it's split between 75% Green Valley and 25% for park maintenance. Then we are also recommending 1 utility receptionist that is paid 50/50 through water and WPC for $62,000 with benefits. And then we have 2 upgrades for assistant directors, both in engineering and the utility funds. And that's your total of the 103. Other requests are being deferred to future years in anticipation of a more stable economy. One of the things that we looked very strongly at was adding 6 public works laborers. As you recall, a year ago, we brought 6 on, and we were going to consider an additional 6. In light of the economy, we're recommending to hold off and look at that more towards next year. Tied with the 6 laborers, they also would need about $400,000 of equipment in order to do their job. So it's a chunk of money. Currently, with the 3 new proposed FTEs, we have 408 full-time authorized positions, and we currently have 26 vacancies, which is that 6.4% that I mentioned earlier, and that is down from 39 vacancies and 11.9% last year. But I do also want to say, I don't know if there's any busier department I guess we're all busy, but I'll tell you, HR with filling positions, it's not just filling this gap between the 26 and 39. It's all the promotionals, it's the coming and going of people. Many, many, many positions have been filled throughout the year. And there's more on this on tab number 4. Then our ARPA allocation, I won't spend a lot of time on this, but we are in our third year already. That's hard to believe, third year of ARPA. So this funds the 23 year, and we do have until December 31st of 26. I didn't add the 26 column on there, but it's coming. But we're about halfway through this ARPA funding. This year, and we're going to talk about it on Saturday, we have slightly reallocated some of that money due to the larger projects that we brought to you a week ago, and we're going to go through those in detail on Saturday. But the highlights for 23, for projects that are over $500,000, you can see there that are listed. The next one is the major projects, and again, this is one that we're going to concentrate on Saturday. This is just kind of a recap of where the money is coming from in order to fund it. On tab number 1, it's the very last page. It's a big spreadsheet, and I know Bob had emailed this out to you, I think, last week. That's one of the things we want to focus our time on. Are you wanting to proceed with those projects, and are you agreeing with the revenue sources that are being earmarked in order to pay for them? If we look at it just as a snapshot, it does draw the general fund balance down about $4.5 million between 22 and 23. Parks, with the direction from the council, for the pool, bids coming in higher, was to draw those down about $323,000. We have MFT monies that have been reallocated for $750 to cover it, and then some ARPA reallocation, and then the home rule. We are not proceeding with the bonding, and instead using that 1.5 per year times 3. So 1.5 times 3 is $4.5 million. That's what's built into that $4.4 million for home rule sales tax for the 3 years. And we will go through the projects in detail on Saturday. And this is just a quick recap. We discussed in detail on September the 27th the proposed CIP projects for 23 through 25. This is a very aggressive schedule in CIP, as I know you all are aware. We are projecting for infrastructure projects over $31 million coming up in 23. So that's a huge effort by our engineering department to carry forward, as well as utilities to get those projects completed. And I will mention tab number 7 is our CIP tab. And as we put this together for 23 through 25, we thought we've also included the 22 amended CIP for your review. So I just want to make sure that you know the 22 projects are in there. Going to the next one then, this is the same chart, but it includes capital equipment. And capital equipment is what it is. It's capital equipment. It includes all of our fleet vehicles, facilities, all of our IT. And then in the 25 year, that also includes buildings for the South Slope. So that's why you'll see that big increase. And so the current year with infrastructure and capital equipment, $41 million of capital spending for 23 coming up, projected to $47 million in 25. Again, very aggressive CIP, and fortunately, we do have millions of dollars in federal grants that are helping fund a lot of these projects. I will say from an engineering standpoint, as well as an accounting standpoint, it's also very labor intensive with all the number of federal grants that we have, because there's so many compliance on federal reporting. And the engineers are the first one to take the brunt of that when they're trying to bid out projects and all that. But everybody's up for it, so. The next fund here we're gonna hit is the general fund. Again, we're gonna focus on Saturday, but the general fund this year is $47.5 million. There's a lot more detail under tab number 5. This pie shows that the biggest portion of the expenditures are in fire and police. As we all know, it's more than 50% of the general fund budget. I might mention on the capital equipment, I don't know if you see that, it's kind of a smaller piece of the pie. It's the dark blue, kind of counterclockwise there. That includes $1 million for the design of the potential new fire station is included there. Then I'd like to take a little bit of time and go through this slide here. This is the general fund projected ending fund balances. And for '22, when we presented the amendments, you know that we were having an excess in general fund reserves. And with the major projects that came before council here a week or two ago, and with the purchase of Heritage Church, we are already starting to spend some of those reserves down. So by 2022, we anticipate our ending fund balance to be at 27.7%, which is about 100 days of reserves. Then as we move into '23, and you can see the list of highlights below, the first thing out of the chute is that it does include $3.1 million of one-time drawdowns for the large projects that we're going to talk about on Saturday. That's for the I-74 parcels, the Riverside roads and parking, that's the $880,000 that you gave a tentative nod to. Again, the design of the fire station, and we allocated some additional dollars for the downtown master plan. TIF advances continue to rise during the next 3-year period through '25 and ongoing right now. They are rising from $8.7 million up to $10.3 million in '25. And that's the column right there in the middle. You'll see it's TIF advances plus the $1 million that we set aside every year for the pension obligation bonds. But you'll see that jump. If you include the pension obligation, the 9.7, and then it jumps up to $11.3 million. As you know, we are all very hopeful that we're going to get some development in TIF 7. And if that changes these numbers and the ending fund balances and the percentages will certainly change. We talked about the capital requests, or I guess, I'm sorry, this is additional capital requests in the budget. On an average between police, fire, public works, and other departments, we spend about $250,000. That stayed flat. That's about the same amount that we spend every year just on various equipment for various departments. We have included McKinley and manual arts schools, some maintenance to make sure that those buildings are shored up. And we've also included upkeep and utilities for the new Bridgepoint 485 property that we purchased. In addition to the property taxes that we talked about, we are recommending a potential transfer to parks to continue the ash borer and tree bank programs to the Parks Department. And overall, the operating is up about 4.7%. And one thing that we're seeing this year is increased sales tax and hotel motel rebates. So as our sales tax goes up and our revenue streams in hotel motel go up, a lot of those are tied to rebates. So even though it looks like, oh wow, we've got a big windfall, a lot of it's going back in rebates. And those are fluctuating between $300,000 and $500,000 additional dollars over the 3-year period. One thing I'd like to point out in this chart, if you look at the operating expenditures, and again, some of those are high in the first 2 years because of the one-time drawdowns. But as our annual expenditures grow, in order to maintain, if we try to maintain the 25% fund balance ratio, you have to actually increase the fund balance to keep that ratio. And if you look down the row with ours, the net general fund cash reserves, you see are dropping from 14 million in '22, it's the column right before the yellow, dropping down to 10,084 are down to 21% by year 25. Each and every one of those years, and we're going to go through that on Saturday, each and every year, revenues and expenditures are balanced. It is the one-time drawdowns that are affecting that ratio, as well as the continued increase of TIF advances on the fund. So then if we look at our chart, it's just another way to look at it a little bit easier. You can see this is the history of our fund balances. And Bob and I and Barry, we spend a lot of time working on this general fund. And our goal is obviously under all circumstances, we are going to stay within our fund balance policy, which is between 20 and 25. Historically, it's been on the higher side or even over. But for these 3 years, heading into the high inflation, again, we're raising taxes potentially, but all of our other revenues being flat, it will draw that fund balance down to about 21%. Our TIF funds, currently, all of our TIFs are in compliance, and I shouldn't say currently, we hope they always are, but they are in compliance with the development agreements. As we've talked about, our TIF number 1 closes out to be finalized December 31st, and in fact, I know Tara and Ryan are going to be bringing forward resolutions here shortly to get that coming forward. Again, the total projected property taxes available in '23 will be $529,000. That could cross over to the city. That's our portion. The schools and other taxing bodies as well will be seeing their slice of the pie. Total tax dollars were about $2.6 million, of which $529,000 is the city's. Again, we talked about the advances to support the general fund. They continue, advances from the general fund to support the TIFs continue to rise. We continue to look at the development opportunities in TIF 7 and 11, very high priority to council. Those 2 particular TIFs right now, without new development, may not break even by the end of the TIF's life. And on Saturday, we're going to hit it and go through. There are some available project dollars in TIFs 3, 5, 8, and 9. And I've reached out to the department heads. We're going to make sure that those project available dollars are spent, and we will be running some of those ideas by you on Saturday. The library, we've talked at length about this in the past, but the staffing and operating budgets have been fully restored. Their Sunday hours continue, and their projected fund balance is anticipated to be $811,000 by the end of '25. That is a significant change from last year and projections. And the reason for that is they had significant vacancies and could not get them filled rapidly. And so it's nice to have the fund balances. It's sad that they had to suffer during trying to get the positions filled, but it did hop their fund balance up to about 24.446%. The budget as proposed also provides for one of the first times here about $70,000 annually in capital funding. In the past, they've been restricted and haven't had a lot of excess money for capital, but there's $75,000 built in. And again, that tax levy, the tax levy dollars are decreasing from $3,059,000 down to a flat $3 million. Parks and Recreation, we've kind of touched on this. More information under tab 8 for parks. Again, their staffing and operating budgets have also been restored. In 2023, it funds $8.5 million in capital projects, the biggest one being the construction of the Riverside Aquatic Center. So sorry. And And then there are various other CI projects of $850,000, and we'll go through those in more detail on Saturday. It's all, you can also find them under tab number 8. It does fund 2 new FTEs for groundkeepers, again, less than $20,000 when you offset the overtime and seasonal help. And we feel we get a lot more hours potentially out of having 2 full-time positions. Talked about funding for the Riverside. We do have operating expenses. We are hoping to operate, fully come operational for the pool here the summer of '23. So there are some increased operating expenses offset by some significant charges for services as well for the pool. And Parks staff has been working with Bob, and we are going to have Parks overseeing a lot of the special events starting in 2023. And Bob can share more about that to you on Saturday. Parks is also beginning to oversee the tree bank program. In the past, it was kind of located in CED at one time, got transferred over into Public Works, and now it's with Parks. So they're ready to get on board with that. And work continues with the ash borer tree removal. Again, their projected fund balance, $965,000. They are up to about 17% projected by 2025. That is still below city policy, so we're still working on it. That's one of the funds we still have work to do. Our active health fund, our health renewal, we project to be up 7.75%, and part of that is due to additional headcounts, additional new hires that are on board. 100% annual expected costs are $5.8 million. Our administration costs that are listed there are pretty much stable from the previous year. It's the annual expected claims, the $4.8 million. That's the biggest part of the increase, and a lot of that has to do with additional staff. From a budget standpoint, what we have to make sure we have money for is the 125% aggregate attachment point. That is worst case scenario, the maximum amount that the city could be responsible for. And that is $6.84 million. And we do have adequate fund balances to fill that gap between the expected and the aggregate in our fund balance. The expected is what we charge back to all departments, as well as 80% is the city, 20% is our employees that pay that $5.8 million. And then we keep the fund balance to pay any potential difference. And we do expect to receive the renewals by the end of this month, and we'll be coming forward, Leah will be coming forward with that November or December.
Your Honor, will you be sharing with us what the reserves are in the health fund?
Yes, and it can be found under tab 14.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Alderman Waldron, I actually see in my little tiny footnote that you can't really see on that slide. It's just virtually $1 million is required between the gap, the 6.8 and the 5.8. We have $1 million, almost $900,000 available in our fund balance. But part of that money, annually, we transfer this coming year, it'll be $650,000 to the retiree fund to help fund unfunded liability. We're trying to keep that balance and ratchet it up ever so slightly every year.
What used to be called the OPEB?
Yeah. Yes.
How much unfunded is that right now?
It's under tab 14 on your last page, but it's the whole chart with all the
About
police and
$6 million.
fire pension. You know, it's terrible. I've been so, nope, it's right here.
It's there, tab 14.
No
It's
guessing.
gonna drive me nuts, but it's in tab 14. I know right where it's at, I can see it. And I'm gonna keep moving along here. The liability fund, but we're making progress. It's making progress, although a little bit slow, of that retiree OPEB. In the liability fund, we expect our insurance premiums to go up about 6%. Again, this is projected. We should be getting actual numbers here the end of the month, and we'll be coming forward to you within the next 30 to 60 days as well. Total claims are projected to increase about 7.5%. And as you know, staff continues to aggressively monitor this fund, especially when it comes to work comp. Our current work comp deductible is $500,000 per claim, and so the city's exposure is high. I know you're very familiar with that. Our projected cash balance is $2.8 million, and we need to keep it at a higher level when we have that high of a deductible on those claims. And we're going to be going through the charts, and you can kind of see where that falls. We've been drawing that fund balance down slowly over the last few years. Then we have a couple of new funds and divisions we want to share with you. Whoops, did I skip ahead? I might have skipped ahead. So sorry. Other internal service funds is the next one. Just very briefly, that's our fleet, facilities, and IT funds. Our policy is for, it's in the yellow, the second column, yellow, for minimum cash balance of $500,000 for fleet, $250,000 in facilities, and $250,000 in IT. What's actually projected for '23, fleet is at 677, so they're right on target, and they're fully funded, reserve set aside for maintenance and going forward for vehicles. Albeit, we have had to stretch vehicles out because the cost has increased, and we're going to go through that. But that fund's on target. Facilities is a little short in '23, but you'll see by the end of the 3 years, it's back on target and within policy. And IT, a little over, but right on track. So again, we're trying our best to keep those dollars there, and it's going to fluctuate based on expenditures every year. The next one is new funds and divisions. And for '23, we've had a lot of talk about cannabis, and we are going to establish a new cannabis fund. And we're going to talk about that on Saturday. We anticipate, and the word is anticipate, we do not know, possibly about $500,000 to be coming in '23. And when we've talked with Bob and Barry, what we are recommending and would like council to consider is to establish that fund. It's under tab 13, and use it only for one-time special projects so that you do not become reliant on your operating budgets. And I can kind of speak to that from a gaming standpoint, gaming revenue that you've heard, not only in our area, but just across the United States. A lot of places become reliant on that gaming revenue, same thing with cannabis, and as it declines, then that has a terrible impact on your operating budgets. Correct. So we're going to propose several places where we'd like council to consider spending that money. We've kind of broken it out between giving some money to special events and whatnot, but we've left the majority of it open for council's direction on what you'd like to spend the money with, if indeed it comes to be here next year. We've also established a special events fund. It is found on page 12, and we're going to go through that as well. And as you know, we had money from the tax layer, now the Vibrant with the mark. The tourism fund is almost depleted. It'll be depleted in '24, down to less than $20,000, I think. And so that's been where our funding for special events has been coming from. And so we want to establish a separate fund. We're going to have several revenue sources, one of them being cannabis. So council's consideration on funding it with some cannabis money and general fund money to pay for those events. We'll go through those on Saturday. We've also added Bridgepoint as a division of the general fund so that we can easily capture what all the expenditures are, property taxes, maintenance, utilities, all those types of things for that property. And then we've also established a downtown capital improvement fund. So we've got our regular CIP fund, we'd like consideration for a downtown improvement fund, and we'd actually segregate those projects that are downtown. So it's easy to say, you know, what kind of money have you put in the downtown? And if we have some grants or special money that comes into that fund, if we don't spend some of it, like if it's not federal money, it would stay within that fund and could be used on another downtown improvement fund. And so we'd like to kind of share those ideas with you as well on Saturday, on the reason for doing that. I'm not going to talk much about the enterprise. We'll hit them on Saturday. We spent a lot of time in September going through the user fees. Those cash flows that we presented have not changed, but we do want to have council's consideration on deciding what that fee structure should be going forward. And then the next two slides are just copies. We've been through all of this. It's kind of just the history of our fund balance reserves. And other than those couple three funds that we talked about, it's park, sanitation, and facility. All the rest of them are right on target and within balance. And then the last fund here is our police and fire pension. As you know, we consolidated with the state of Illinois this year. Police was July 1st, firefighters April 1st. And so we reported on our books, but all the investments and everything is in the consolidated funds now. And then just lastly, we've already distributed the books, but I do want to say, as we head into Saturday, we can go as fast or slow as you want to go. We've got 6 hours from 8 o'clock until 2. I think just about anything you ever wanted to know about the budget is here. But if you need additional information, I'm happy to try to help with that. There are 6 primary decision points that we're going to need, and I'm going to be preparing an agenda that will get out prior to Saturday. I don't know if you want to jog these down, but the main 6 that we're going to concentrate on Saturday is to reach conclusion on the CIP projects to get landed, especially for the 23 year. We want a decision on the new projects that we've talked about, that $17 million and those funding sources. And again, that's under tab 1 in your book. We want to talk about and land on the ARPA reallocation of a couple of those dollars to make sure that you're comfortable with those projects. Now for a couple of the big ones, property tax levy. So we're going to focus on that, and before we adopt the budget, a decision will be made. The utility rates, again, we're going to go through all of that, but for 23, we're looking at stormwater and sanitation to potentially increase those fees. And then lastly would be to approve the new position requests that we are recommending. And there are other things along the way in the budget, but these are the big 6 things that we're wanting to spend most of our time on Saturday. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Great job.
Thank you, Ms. Barnes. Yes, Mr. Timian?
I have 2 questions, Carol. The first is just we talked about $1 million increase due to gas, electric, just consumables that the city uses. I assume that there was normally a annual increase that's baked in based on rising costs. I'm just kind of curious to know what the delta is between what we expected before inflation versus.
I can pull that exact amount out of our, like if I look back on last year, I could pull that forward for you.
Okay.
But I mean, it averages 3 to 4% typically.
That's fair. And then with the needing for a public meeting with the truth in taxation, I don't recall, what is the cutoff for that?
105%.
35?
105.
Yeah, 105%. And we, right now, would be at 106 plus a little bit.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Anything further? No? Okay, well, we'll look forward to Saturday.
Okay.
We'll be
Thank you,
ready to
Carol.
go. Thank you very much. So we'll call our regular council meeting to order. Pledge of allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Macias, do you have an invocation?
No, Your Honor.
Roll call, please.
Alderperson Williams,
Present.
Macias.
Present.
Wentz,
Present.
Timian,
Present.
Moyer,
Present.
O'Brien,
Present.
Waldron,
Present.
Schmidt.
Present.
Your Honor, I request approval of Committee of the Whole and Council meeting minutes of September 27th, 2022, Committee of the Whole Council and Executive Session minutes of October 4th, 2022, and appointments made during Committee of the Whole on October 4th and October 18th, 2022. Second reading ordinances. Council Bill 3031-2022, an ordinance amending Chapter 20 Motor Vehicles and Traffic of the Moline Code of Ordinances, Appendix 3 thereof, pedestrian crossing signals, by including mid-block on 48th Street, 675 feet south of 12th Avenue, mid-block on River Drive on the west side of the intersection of 41st Street, mid-block on River Drive 935 feet east of 25th Street, mid-block on 53rd Street 175 feet north of 19th Avenue, mid-block on 53rd Street 200 feet north of 36th Avenue Court, and mid-block on 34th Avenue 1,080 feet west of 7th Street, East Moline. Council Bill 3032-2022, an ordinance authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute and attest to an ordinance amending Chapter 34 Water and Sewers of the Moline Code of Ordinances, Section 34-3200, sewerage rate system, by repealing said sections in their entirety, acting in lieu thereof, new Sections 34-3200, dealing with the same subject matter. Council Bill 3033-2022, an ordinance amending Chapter 8, Buildings and Other Construction and Building Services, Article 7, Division 3, Emergency Radio System Coverage. Council Bill 3034-2022, an ordinance enlarging the corporate limits of the city of Moline by annexing thereto a certain parcel of land in Rock Island County, Illinois, commonly known as 3454 14th Street, Moline, Illinois, 61265, parcel number 17-08-401-025. Council Bill 3035-2022, an ordinance enlarging the corporate limits of the city of Moline by annexing thereto a certain parcel of land in Rock Island County, Illinois, commonly known as 3807 15th Street D, Moline, Illinois, 61265, parcel 1709304012. Council Bill 3036-2022, an ordinance enlarging the corporate limits of the city of Moline by annexing thereto certain parcel of land in Rock Island County, Illinois, commonly known as 3811 15th Street D, Moline, Illinois, 61265, parcel 1709304013. Council Bill 3037-2022, an ordinance enlarging the corporate limits of the city of Moline by annexing thereto a certain parcel of land in Rock Island County, Illinois, commonly known as 3814 15th Street C, Moline, Illinois, 61265, parcel 1708-413-040. Council Bill 3038-2022, an ordinance enlarging the corporate limits of the city of Moline by annexing thereto a certain parcel of land in Rock Island County, Illinois, commonly known as 3836 15th Street C, Moline, Illinois, 61265, parcel 1708-413-047. Council Bill 3039-2022, an ordinance enlarging the corporate limits of the city of Moline by annexing thereto a certain parcel of land in Rock Island County, Illinois, commonly known as 3810 15th Street, Moline, Illinois, 61265.
3910, please.
3910 15th Street, Moline, Illinois, 61265, parcel 1717-205-017. Council Bill 3040-2022, an ordinance enlarging the corporate limits of the city of Moline by annexing thereto a certain parcel of land in Rock Island County, Illinois, commonly known as 3912 15th Street C, Moline, Illinois, 61265, parcel 1708-414-029. Council Bill 3041-2022, an ordinance enlarging the corporate limits of the city of Moline by annexing thereto a certain parcel of land in Rock Island County, Illinois, commonly known as 4110 29th Street, Moline, Illinois, 61265, parcel 1709-410-016. Resolutions. Council Bill 1143-2022, a resolution authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute a purchase agreement with Ferguson Water Works for meter reading software and equipment improvements, and authorizing the Director of Utilities to purchase software licensing and related meter equipment to be used by the Utilities Department for $22,923.55. Council Bill 1174-2022, A resolution authorizing the Fleet and Facilities Manager to purchase an additional sport utility vehicle for the Police Department from Sexton Ford in Moline, Illinois, for the amount of $27,600.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Motion by Alderman Went, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderman O'Brien. Roll call, please.
Alderperson Macias.
Aye.
Went.
Aye.
Timian.
Aye.
Moyer.
Aye.
O'Brien.
Aye.
Waldron.
Aye.
Schmidt.
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
8 ayes, no nays, and that motion passes. Non-consent agenda, first reading ordinances. Council Bill 3042-2022, an ordinance amending Chapter 34 Water and Sewers of the Moline Code of Ordinances, Section 34-4400 in general, by repealing said sections in their entirety in lieu thereof, new sections 34-4400 dealing with the same subject matter. Council Bill 3043-2022, an ordinance amending Chapter 5 Amusements of the Moline Code of Ordinances by repealing Chapter 5 in its entirety and acting in lieu thereof, one new Chapter 5 dealing with the same subject matter. Council Bill 3044-2022, an ordinance amending Chapter 4 Alcoholic Liquor, Section 4-3300, Class B Tavern, Class BB Liquor Producer and Reseller License of the Moline Code of Ordinances to create an exception to the prohibition of minors in licensed Class B and BB establishments where food is served to allow for their admission prior to 9:00 p.m. when accompanied by a parent or guardian. And that is all I have this evening, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, I have a couple of events to share with you, to encourage you to attend coming up this Saturday. That I received an email last night about a new business opening up at the Heritage Office, Heritage Place, and they're having an opening. It's called Quartz Botanicals. They're having an open house from 10:30 a.m. to 8:30 p.m. So I know I have told them we're in a budget session and there's a big parade, but if you're available, please stop by. The Brick House, which you might know if you have Lego-loving friends in your families, has changed locations, and they are having a ribbon cutting on October 25th at 10 a.m. And we have scheduled a plaque ceremony for the sandbaggers, the members of which year class from Moline High School?
64, 65, and 66, I
Oh,
believe.
yes, okay. So there's a new plaque, and we're gonna dedicate that on October 27th at 2 p.m. at its new location down
It's by
off
the
of
Coney Building
Yes,
on the trail, recreational trail.
on the trail. So those are 3 events coming up. I also just want to let you know that I'm working on the next listening post with the next alder person up, which is Mr. O'Brien. And also a community meeting, now that the Plan Commission has done a work session on the ADUs. We'll be wanting to touch base with the community, and we're working with Mr. Vitlok on that. So sometime in November, there'll be a community meeting on that. And just letting you know, in my position on the Visit Quad Cities board, we've been having, obviously, our quarterly meetings. There's lots of energy around tourism dollars and marketing and support for that. You may have seen Mr. Leichner's editorial in the paper. So you may be hearing from Visit Quad Cities in the near future. And that is all I have. Mr. Williams.
Nothing, Your Honor.
Thank you. Mr. Macias.
Well, just, thank you, Your Honor. Just inviting everybody to the Mercado on Fifth parade. There's over 70 floats that are registered.
Wow.
And this is the first parade of its kind in the area. I think it's gonna be a big deal. And yeah, very visual, great cultural event, so I encourage anybody who can make it to check it out this Saturday at 2:30. So we'll be rushing.
Yeah, we'll be Wait, and speaking of, we'll be rushing from somewhere closer. I neglected to mention, the clerk asked me to say that our budget work session is here in the Cow, not at the library. So we're closer to the parade.
So
Thank
there's
you.
time to paint your faces. Sure. And that's it, Your Honor.
Thank you. Mr. Went. Mr. Timian.
Nothing, Your Honor.
Nothing, Your Honor.
One of our citizen Cecilia O'Brien was inducted into the Labor Hall of Fame Saturday night, and she also received the John White Community Service Award.
Congratulations.
Put that in there. Thank you.
Mr. Waldron,
Nothing, Your Honor.
Mr. Schmidt,
Nothing, Your Honor.
staff?
Just two quick notes. As far as the acquisition of the Bridgepoint 485 property, the congregational approval did take place, so it's all thumbs up, it's a green light, and the closing, Margaret is working with their attorney, bring about a closing in mid to late November, either just before Thanksgiving or right after Thanksgiving. So we're moving forward with that. And as Carol pointed out, we have pretty much know what the revenue stream is there today, and we also know what the expenditure side is, and we're gonna try and keep those things in balance, so it's just nothing more than holding it as opposed to incurring any long-standing debts or costs. The other thing I know of interest to the council was there was some discussion some time ago about the South Moline Township Fire Protection District and the lack of an agreement going back to 2005 with, multiple attempts that didn't succeed. We did have a joint meeting here, actually in the COW, with the members of the Fire Protection District Board, and that went very, very well. Fire Chief Regenweather and I attended that meeting, and we are now gathering the information related to all the properties that are impacted by the services we provide. We'll be subtracting those which you are annexing out of that agreement fairly, and coming back with some kind of recommendation, I would think, hopefully by the end of the year. So, just want to give you a heads up, that is happening, so, and that's all I have.
Any other staff? No? Okay, thank you. Is there any public comment? Seeing none, do we have an executive session? No, I don't think so. All right, I need a motion to adjourn. I need a motion to adjourn. Thank you. Mr. West. Second by Mr. Schmidt. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. We are
No
adjourned.
disagreement.